Phone definitely works today. Happy Monday. The time for convening has arrived and the Senate will now come to order. At this time, I'd like to ask that all unauthorized persons exit the chamber. I know I referred to you with this on Friday or on Thursday, Senator from the 53rd, but I'm going to do it again because the chamber was almost empty. I'd like to recognize the often referred to as Rock City's finest.
Mr. President, Rock City is a wonderful place to see nature in its freedom and on top of a beautiful mountain called Lookout Mountain. Today, 1945, Governor Ellis Arnold signed a resolution that created the Georgia Ports Authority. Now that's the fastest growing port in America and the third largest. Mr. President, today also is National Napping Day, and after I get through, I think I'll join that one. The journal, Mr. President, a correction needs to be made into the journal regarding a committee report. I request that the senator from the 50th be called upon to explain the need for the correction.
The chair recognizes the senator from the 50th to speak to the correction.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent that the Senate Journal from the 25th Legislative Day be corrected so that the report from the Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs reads SB 338, due pass by substitute LC 441481S.
Ms. Secretary, will you please read the caption?
Senate Bill number 338 by Senator Kirkpatrick the 32nd and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 11 of Title 4 of the OCGA relating to general provisions relative to animal protection so as to provide for annual license fees, to authorize the Commissioner to promulgate rules and regulations, to provide for applicants to submit a criminal background check, and for other purposes. Mr. President, on March 3rd, 2020, the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs recommends that this bill do pass by amendment. Respectfully submitted by Senator Wilkinson, Chair. That completes order, Mr. President.
Senator from the 50th has asked for unanimous consent that the Senate Journal from the 25th Legislative Day be corrected so that the report from the Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs reads SB 338, due pass by substitute LC 44-1481S. Is there objection? The chair hears none and the journal is corrected as requested. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none and the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills or resolutions, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, first reading of Senate bills and resolutions, please. Oh, that was easy. First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions, please.
House Bill 576 by Representative Williams of the 145th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Title 15 of the OCGA relating to courts so as to provide for the distribution priority of partial payments of fines, bond forfeitures, and costs, provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes.
Public safety.
House Bill 815 by Representative Gaines of the 117th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to sales and use taxes so as to exempt from taxation local authorities.
Finance.
House Bill 847 by Representative Corbett of the 174th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 23 of Title 2 of the OCGA relating to hemp farming.
Agriculture.
House Bill 855 by Representative Widower of the 119th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Part 3 of Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to educational programs so as to direct the State Board
Education and Youth.
House Bill 859 by Representative Perkle of the 155th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Code Section 4873.1 of the OCGA and relating to tinting of windows.
Special Judiciary.
House Bill 885 by Representative Pietra of the 166 and others. Bill titled an act to amend Code Section 42536 of the OCGA relating to confidentiality of information supplied by inmates.
Public safety.
House Bill 10454 by Representative Cooper of the 43rd and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 12, Title 31 of the OCGA relating to control of hazardous conditions.
Health and Human Services.
House Resolution 1167 by Representative Green of the 151st and others. A resolution authorizing the conveyance of certain waste state-owned real property located
Government
in Lynn.
Oversight.
That please order, Mr. President.
Secretary will now read reports of standing committees, please.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Higher Education has had in consideration the following legislation and is directed to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 400, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 416, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted by Senator Tippins of the 37th District, Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance has had on consideration the following legislation and is directed to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 441, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 480, due pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Huffsteller of 52nd District Chair. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Government Oversight has had in consideration the following legislation and is directed to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Resolution 818, due pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Heath of the 31st District Chair. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor has under consideration the following legislation and is directed to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 299, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 412, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 432, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted by Senator Jones of the 9th District Chair. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Interstate Cooperation has had on consideration the following legislation and is directed to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 752, due pass. Senate Bill 484, due pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Sims of the 12th District Vice Chair. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Judiciary has had in consideration the following legislation and is directed to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 477, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 288, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 423, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 464, due pass. Senate Bill 451, due pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Stone of the 23rd District Chair. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Natural Resources and the Environment has had in consideration the following legislation and is directed to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 426, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted by Senator Harper, the 7th District Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Public Safety has had in consideration the following legislation and is directed to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 418, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 446, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 479, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 460, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted by Senator Albers of the 56th District Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities has had under consideration the following legislation and is directed to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 428, due pass. Senate Bill 375, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 411, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted by Senator Cowsert of the 46th District Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities has had under consideration the following legislation and is directed to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 379, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted by Senator Cowsert of the 46th District Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules has had under consideration the following legislation and is directed to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Resolution 693, due pass. Senate Resolution 854, due pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Mullis of the 53rd District Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Science and Technology has had under consideration the following legislation and has directed to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 476, due pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Unterman of the 45th District Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations has had under consideration the following legislation and is directed to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 475, due pass. Senate Bill 490, due pass. House Bill 988, due pass. House Bill 1042, due pass. House Bill 1043, due pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Anderson of the 24th District Chair. Mr. President, Senate Transportation Committee has under consideration the following legislation and is directed to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Resolution 844, due pass by substitute. Senate Resolution 885, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 489, due pass. House Bill 511, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted by Senator Beach of the 21st District Chair. That completes the order, Mr. President. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Secretary will now read bills and resolutions for the second time, please.
Senate Bill 28 by Senator Jackson of the 2nd and others. Insurance imposing co-payment and co-insurance or office visit charge in an amount greater than charges imposed for physician prohibit. Senate Bill 101 by Senator Beach of the 21st and others. Coach Safely Act enact. Senate Bill 321 by Senator Huffstettler of the 52nd and others. Physician assistance relating to the number of physician can authorize and supervise at any one time. Provisions revise. Senate Bill 338 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others. Animal protection, annual license fees, provide. Senate Bill 349 by Senator James of the 35th and others. Local boards of education, feminine hygiene products in certain restrooms used by students, provide. Senate Bill 358 38 by Senator Harper of the 7th and others. State symbols, muscadine grape as the official state grape designate. Senate Bill 381 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others. Georgia Food Act, certain information obtained by the Department of Agriculture from the Federal Food and Drug Administration, confidential and not subject to disclosure, provide. Senate Bill 386 by Senator Unterman of the 45th and others. Georgia Special Needs Scholarship Act, prior to school year requirement, revise. Senate Bill 387 by Senator Jordan of the 6th, statewide school lunch program, State Board of Education to promulgate rules and regulations, authorize course of instruction, preparation of food. Senate Bill 390 by Senator Gooch of the 51st and others. Civil practice and litigation, several titles of the OCGA, amend and revise. Senate Bill 398 by Senator Harrell of the 40th and others. After School Recess Act, assignment of graded homework for students in grades kindergarten through 2, prohibit, enact. Senate Bill 404 by Senator Dolezal of the 27th and others. Developmental impact fees, education, provide. Senate Bill 417 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others. Physicians, assistants, and others. Criminal background checks for certain healthcare professionals and others. Provisions, revise. Senate Bill 430 by Senator Ligon of the 3rd and others. Quality Basic Education Act, home studies students and private school students to take courses at a college and career academy, authorize. Senate Bill 437 by Senator Beach of the 21st and others. Georgia Cooperative Associations Code, formation of general cooperative associations under the laws of the state, provide. Senate Bill 445 by Senator Keddy of the 18th and others. Soil erosion, sedimentation, water and sewer authorities to be designated as local issuing authorities for land distributing activity permits, authorize. Senate Bill 447 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others. Work-based learning programs, definitions regarding work-based learning and related positions and programs, provide. Senate Bill 466 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others. Quality Basic Education Act, employment needs improving rating, group of performance evaluation ratings, remove. Senate Bill 468 by Senator Unterman of the 45th. Dogs, animal shelters to accept registration of veteran service dogs required. Senate Bill 473 by Senator Harper of the 7th. Conservation natural resources, duties, powers, responsibilities relative to historic preservation from Department of Natural Resources to Department of Community Affairs, transfer. Senate Bill 474 by Senator Harper of the 7th. Department of Natural Resources, construct, operate, maintain, and supply informational materials at welcome centers assigned to it by the governor, provide. Senate Bill 482 by Senator Burke of the 11th and others. Office of Health Strategy and Coordination, State Payer All Claims Database, Establishment Advisory Committee, provide. Senate Bill 843 by Senator Brass of the 28th and others. Behavioral Rehabilitation and Stability Services Act, certain Medicaid reimbursement, and act. Senate Bill 486 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others. Effectiveness of educational programs, administration of either the SAT or ACT to all public schools in grade 11 require. Senate Bill 493 by Senator Thompson the 14th and others. Selling and other trade practices, legislative findings, standard for cybersecurity programs to protect businesses from liability, provide. Senate Resolution 776 by Senator Dolezal the 27th. General Assembly, development impact fees for educational purposes, provide, CA. House Bill 777 by Representative Corbett the 174th and others. Community Affairs, Department of, consider amending the state minimum standard codes to allow tall mass timber construction types, direct. That completes the order, Mr. President.
All right, it's now time for our morning roll call. It's now time for a morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? I can't believe my eyes. Oh, Chair recognizes the senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 38th for business outside of the chamber.
Without objection, the senator from the 38th is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 48th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 42nd for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 42nd is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 12th of business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 12th is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 2nd for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 2nd is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 26th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to excuse the gentleman from the 25th, business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the gentleman from the 25th is excused. Are there any additional motions to excuse? Secretary will call the roll. Senators, signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. It's now time for our morning devotional. It is now time for our morning devotional, and I'd like to ask that all senators please take your seats. All senators, please take your seats and cease all audible conversations. Doorkeepers, please secure the chamber at this time. I'd like to recognize the senator from the 45th to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance today and to introduce our chaplain of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Please join. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the Georgia flag. Pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag, principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. It's my honor today to present to you Rabbi Jesse Sharon. And it's especially important today because at sundown, this is the beginning of Purim. And I know that the rabbi is going to be very, very busy tonight. The rabbi is from Temple Beth David in Snellville, Georgia, in Gwinnett County. And I remember years ago, as a matter of fact, I think it was in 1981, when just a few families in Gwinnett County got together, and we had our first meetings that were held in a little school in Lilburn, Georgia. And lo and behold, as Gwinnett County became one of the fastest growing counties in the nation, our temple grew and grew and grew. And we were able to move out of a school building and build our own temple right in the middle of Snellville. And what has been so interesting is to watch as Gwinnett County grew, to see the families and the Jewish families in Gwinnett County grow with it. And I have to tell you, to begin with, the temple, it was a rough beginning when we first started building and the acceptance into the community. But over the years, we've been very well accepted, and the temple has grown. Just a little bit of the history about the rabbi, and I don't think you want to mess with him because he was a member of the Israeli Defense Forces from 2003 to 2006. So he's a pretty tough cookie. So he attended Arizona State University, Yeshiva in Jerusalem, the Jewish Spiritual Leaders Institute. So we're very pleased that he came to Snellville in July 1st of 2019. Some of the things that we work on since 1981 is to be devoted to the enhancement of Jewish life and a belief in cooperation and mutual support for all Jewish institutions. We've thrived and grown, and we look forward to continuing that growth with Rabbi Sharon. Rabbi Sharon, thank you for coming.
Shalom Aleichem. Good morning to all of you. Peace be upon all of you. Chag Purim Sameach. This evening starts our beautiful, joyous holiday of Purim. This morning's devotional is going to be adapted from the Gwinnett Interfaith Alliance. The Gwinnett Interfaith Alliance started from some congregants of Temple Beth David after the tragedies, the massacre that occurred at the Temple of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We gather today as citizens and public servants. I invite all present to bring their best selves, their open minds, and caring hearts to all you do. I invite each person here to call forth the spirit of love and compassion as you engage one another in your shared purposes to move our state and communities toward a better quality of life for all residents. Let each of us present call forth the strength from our various faiths, beliefs, and moral codes to become better stewards of the trust and funds of all our residents. May we offer our compassion to all locally and globally who are suffering and in need of strength, courage, and resources to alleviate their suffering. May we have the conscience and wisdom to make the right decisions on behalf of the citizens of our growing communities. I offer my appreciation for those who serve our country and state and preserve the peace and order in our communities. May we seek to make this a welcoming environment for all. Give us thankful hearts for our good fortune to live in this country with its high ideals for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. May it be so. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce our Doctor of the Day, and I'll call upon the Senator from the 6th to do so.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. Please join me in welcoming our Doctor of the Day, Dr. Alan Pelcevich. He graduated from the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine and completed a residency in orthopedic surgery at Case Western Reserve and a fellowship in hand and upper extremity surgery at Harvard University Brigham and Women's Hospital and Boston Children's Hospital. He's also board certified in orthopedics, holds a master's degree in public health from Emory University, and has served as chief of the orthopedic surgery section at Northside Hospital, and currently serves as the medical director of the hand and upper extremity program at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. He has authored various publications and chapters on topics concerning problems affecting the hand and upper extremity, and has been named in Atlanta Magazine Top Doc for the past several years. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Pelcevich.
Thank you for having me. Over the last 20 years, I've had the privilege of serving infants and children and adults with various ailments, especially those involving paralysis. And today it's my honor to be here to help serve those who serve the citizens of our great state. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming in. Hopefully it's a boring day. You'll probably answer more questions about Corona. Very specialized crowd. Thank you. All right, we got some special guests with us today. All right, we have a number of special guests with us today that we would like to recognize. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 673 by Senator Mullis of the 53rd. A resolution congratulating the Gordon Lee High School softball team for winning the 2019 Class A Georgia High School Association Fast Pitch State Championship and for other purposes. Whereas excellent play, superior teamwork, and extraordinary resilience make this team a spectacular one to observe throughout the season. And as a fitting finale to its remarkable 2019 campaign, the team captured its 5th straight state softball championship. And whereas the phenomenal performance of the team is a clear indication of the outstanding athletic ability, dedication, hard work, and unity of purpose and spirit of each member of the team, its superb offensive and defensive talents, and the astute direction of head coach Dana Mull. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body congratulate the Gordon Lee High School softball team for winning the 2019 Class A Georgia High School Association Fast Pitch State Championship and extend best wishes for continued success. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to recognize a senator from the 53rd to recognize our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President. Live from Chickamauga, not only do they have a great senator, but a great girls softball team. This is the 10th state champ that this team, or Gordon Lee, has won, and under Coach Coach Mole, Kirby Bradley, our seniors, Reagan Thompson, Anna Logan, Marcy Pearson, and Maddie Clark. If you would, the rest of the team, please rise. Let's welcome the state champs, Class A of girls softball, state of Georgia. All right, thank you. We'll do a picture now. They all wanted to speak, so none of them are going to.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the resolution for our next special guests?
Senate Resolution 726 by Senator Jackson II and others. A resolution congratulating and commending Mary Frances Early and for other purposes. Whereas Mary Frances Early has recently received the University of Georgia's highest honor, the President's Medal. And whereas this groundbreaking pioneer has been celebrated as the first African American to graduate from the University of Georgia, earning her master's degree in music education in 1962. And whereas in recognition of this heroic and brave individual, the University of Georgia plans to name its College of Education after Mary Frances Early. And whereas it is abundantly fitting and proper that the outstanding accomplishments of this extraordinary Georgian be appropriately recognized. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body congratulate and commend Mary Frances Early for her dedication in the face of adversity and extend best wishes for future happiness. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 38th to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am honored today to introduce to you graduate, first African-American graduate of University of Georgia, and of course that is my alma mater. She is Mary Frances Early. She had an impact as a civil rights icon and a music educator. She has inspired and influenced generations of students, schools, and Black communities across the nation. She played an integral role in the campaign for racial equality and remains a tireless advocate in the field of education. In 2018, Ms. Early was awarded University of Georgia's President's Medal in recognition of her legacy and lifetime accomplishments. The naming of the Mary Frances Early College of Education was approved by the Board of Regents on October 16th of last year, 2019. To celebrate this momentous occasion, Albany State University President Marion Frederick will deliver the 20th annual Mary Frances Early Lecture, named in honor of Ms. Early by University of Georgia graduate and professional scholars. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Ms. Mary Frances Early, and she will speak to us next.
Thank you, Senator Tate, and to all the members of the Georgia Senate. I am very proud to receive the honor of a resolution from this body. And I could not have imagined in 1962, when I received the first degree awarded to an African American, I could not have imagined that anything like this would have happened. And I also could not have imagined that the College of Education at the University of Georgia would be named in my honor. And the reason is because the campus at that time was very unfriendly. But today it has changed. Senator Tate and I have several things in common. We are both women. We are both activists. She's a Georgia graduate, and so am I. And she's also a sorority sister, Alpha Kappa Alpha. I knew Dr. Tate's father, Horace Tate, who was also a senator here some years ago. He's the late Dr. Tate. But I need to let you know that Dr. Tate was the executive secretary of the Georgia Teachers Education Association. That was the Black Teacher Association. And when he heard that I was going to take a leave of absence from my teaching job and go to the University of Georgia during the spring and then the summer sessions, he wrote letters to the Georgia Black teachers. And he asked them to donate $1 or $2 to help Miss Early, because taking a leave of absence meant I would lose my pension, I would lose my salary. I only made $3,000 a year. But I would lose insurance, and so they did respond. And when I went back to the University of Georgia after that first summer, the spring of '62, I had over $2,000, thanks to Dr. Horace Tate. And I will never forget him for that. You see, all of us really stand on the shoulders of somebody. We are not successful unless we recognize that. Also, I want to give credit to the person who discovered me. Dr. Maurice C. Daniels, who stands on the floor here today, discovered me in 1997. He had been at University of Georgia as a professor and then as dean, and now dean emeritus. He had been there almost 20 years. He had never heard my name, because my history, my role in University of Georgia's desegregation was essentially erased. I was not remembered until 1997. So I want to say thank you to him. I stand on his shoulders. For had it not been for him, I wouldn't be standing here today. And I want to say thank you, senators, for recognizing me with this wonderful tribute. Thank you very much.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the resolution for our next special guests?
Senate Resolution 597 by Senator Harbison of the 15th. A resolution recognizing and commending Jessica Nicole Roberts, Miss Columbus Outstanding Teen 2020, and for other purposes. Whereas a talented, driven, and accomplished young woman, Jessica Nicole Roberts was recently selected as Miss Columbus Outstanding Teen 2020. And whereas Jessica has maintained an impressive grade point average while staying active in her church, school, and community, such events as March for Our Lives as a keynote speaker and leading a campaign for breast cancer awareness with her Girl Scout troop. And whereas it is abundantly fitting and proper that the outstanding accomplishments of this remarkable and distinguished Georgian be appropriately recognized. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize and commend Jessica Nicole Roberts, Miss Columbus Outstanding Teen 2020, and wish her continued success in all her future endeavors. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Chair would like to call upon the senator from the 15th to recognize our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. It does give me a great deal of pleasure today to introduce a group of young people, two young people specifically, who are doing great things in our community and our state. We talk a lot about a lot of things that go wrong in our community. This is something that goes right. Miss Jessica Roberts, Miss Columbus Outstanding Teen, Miss Jada Chambers, Miss Columbus Outstanding Teen Princess, accompanied by Jessica's father, Mr. Oz Roberts. I've known Oz forever. I worked at Sears years ago. I worked at Sears store back in the day, and his mom would come in and shop for him, and she would only shop with me. And I just loved his mom. Just great people, great family. Mr. Oz Roberts, Miss Vanessa Roberts, Jessica's mother, and Miss Jacqueline Bunn accompanying here with us. Let's give them a great round of applause, and let's welcome Jessica to make some comments.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. I'd also like to thank Mr. Ed Harbison of Georgia's 15th District for recognizing me this morning. He's always supported me in my entire life, and I'm truly honored to be here. I'm Jessica Roberts. I'm 16 years old, and I'm a junior, and I'm a dance major at Randy McCullers School of the Arts. And I'm currently serving as Miss Columbus's Outstanding Teen 2020, and will be competing for the state title of Miss Georgia's Outstanding Teen 2020 in June at the beautiful River Center of the Performing Arts in Columbus, Georgia. The Miss Georgia competition is part of the Miss America's Outstanding Teen System and the Miss America System. And the Miss America System is the largest scholarship, gives out the largest amount of scholarship for women in the world, with a grand total of more than $45 million in scholarship annually. Being a part of the Miss America organization means that you have to have your own personal platform. And when everyone picks their platform, they must think about what inspires them, motivates them, and needs to be put in the spotlight. And when I picked my platform, the first thing I thought about was dogs. Now, this may not seem like the most likely platform or the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about what needs to be promoted, but let me tell you why it should be. My platform is People Helping Animals, Animals Helping People, which is the motto for Paws Humane Society in Columbus, Georgia, a nonprofit organization that enhances and supplements the services provided by Animal Care and Control. Using my platform, I work with both sides of this statement. These facilities reduce the need to euthanize homeless animals due to the severe pet overpopulation, and through organizations and people fostering and adopting pets. Pets can bring comfort and a sense of security to owners and individuals, and pets are vital to the emotional state and well-being of a lot of people. Therapy animals are used to help deal with emotional and physical discomfort, and therapy animals and other animals can be brought into homes, nursing homes, schools, hospice, and in areas of disaster. Therapy dogs are so much a part of the recovery at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, that 14 therapy dogs were given their own tribute page in the yearbook. Service dogs are also being used to locate people trapped in the debris of the recent tornadoes in Nashville. Another type of service dog is a diabetes assist dog. They're trained to monitor the smells in the air for specific scents on the human's breath that show that their blood pressure is dropping and that they have low sugar levels. They're trained to then alert their owner by touching them, pawing them, or nudging them. With every platform, every person needs to have their own personal connection. And my connection is through my Aunt Tracy. When I was in the 5th grade, she suffered from a stroke that left her paralyzed on the right side of her body, and she was scared to even leave her own front door. But when my teacup Yorkie Switzer broke her leg, it gave my Aunt Tracy the inspiration and the courage to make her own first steps, and inspired her to lift herself up and encouraged her to live her life the best that she possibly can. Tomorrow, Tuesday, March 10th, WRBL and Kia Autosports of Columbus, Georgia will be holding a collection drive for Paws Humane in the local animal shelters. This drive will be collecting any items that are used to take care of animals. So next time that you're looking for an organization to support or for your forever friend, please look at your local animal shelters first, because more than 150,000 animals will end up homeless in the state of Georgia alone this year. And I hope to drastically reduce that number, because I want people to understand that animals can do more than just be there for you, but they can also help you get through your own doorsteps in your life. I'd also like to take a moment to thank my princess here, Jada, for coming with me this morning. The Miss America organization has a mentorship program to inspire young girls to come and be their best selves. So I brought Jada, one of my princesses, here with me this morning. And I also brought my mom and my dad and my Aunt Jack. But thank you for listening and having me here this morning.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the resolution for our next special guest?
Senate Resolution 881 by Senator Brass of the 28th. A resolution commending the Georgia Golf Course Superintendents Association for the development of the best management practices for Georgia golf courses and recognizing March 9th, 2020 as Georgia Golf Day at the state capitol and for other purposes. Whereas the development of the best management practices for Georgia golf courses was made possible by the superintendents in the state of Georgia, the Georgia Golf Course Superintendents Association, and turf grass scientists at the University of Georgia. And whereas it is with approximately 800 members, the Georgia Golf Course Superintendents Association is one of the largest affiliated chapters of the GCSAA Association, and its members enhance the game of golf and the golf course management profession through education, environmental stewardship, and advocacy. And whereas today's superintendents draw on more environmental science than any generation before them, their training included biological sciences, chemistry, horticulture, soils, environmental sciences, and many related disciplines, uniquely qualifying them for their duties. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the Georgia Golf Course Superintendents Association for the development of the best management practices for Georgia golf courses and recognize March 9th, 2020 as Georgia Golf Day at the state capitol. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Chair would like to call upon the senator from the 28th to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of this body, I've got members here with me from the Georgia chapter of Club Management Association, the Georgia chapter of the Golf Course Superintendents Association, the PGA Georgia section, and the Georgia State Golf Association. And we've got a pretty iconic tournament coming up in the first full week of April. And I wanted to do a kind of a quick education for everyone. The name of the tournament is the Masters, and it is played at the Augusta National Golf Club. So many people confuse the golf course and call it the Masters, but the Masters is actually the name of the tournament. And if you're local, it's the tournament. But one quick thing I want to add too, that a lot of people don't know, that about 98% of the world's golf carts are made in this state, many of which are made in my district in Noonan at the Yamaha plant. But think about that, 98% of all golf carts are manufactured right here in the United States. And then we have other manufacturers that are in the hard goods and soft goods industries as well, with Bridgestone, Mizuno, and Oxford Golf Apparel, also all based right here, that generate collectively about $615 million in product shipments throughout the world. But I want to bring up the executive director of the Georgia State Golf Association, Matt Vanderpool, to say a few words. And I also want to thank the senator from District 33. His love of golf and has helped bring us together, and he's just become a dear friend. So thank you, Senator from the 33rd, for being here. But up next, Matt Vanderpool with GSGA.
Thank you, Senator Brass. It's a pleasure to be here with you today to champion the golf industry across the state of Georgia and communicate how strong of an economic driver it is. As Senator Brass mentioned, I'm sure all of you are very aware of the Masters tournament that's going to be conducted approximately 1 month from now. But the industry of golf across the state is quite robust. We have 367 facilities from the mountains of North Georgia all the way to the Golden Isles. He mentioned a lot of manufacturing that goes on. Again, 98% of the golf carts in the world are manufactured here in Georgia. All of that put together creates almost $3 billion of annual economic impact to the Georgia economy. When you add in other enabled industries such as real estate and tourism, that number grows to almost $5 billion. It supports over 45,000 jobs, $1.6 billion in wages and benefits, and almost $240 million in state and local tax revenue. So as you can see, the golf industry in Georgia is very strong. We appreciate your support of our industry, and look forward to all of you either attending in person next month at the Masters or watching on television. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the resolution for our next special guests?
Senate Resolution 628 by Senator Hill of the 4th and others. Resolution recognizing and commending R. Darrell Gay, Ph.D., for his years of distinguished service to the citizens of Georgia and the public safety net system, and for his service as a public policy advisor to the Georgia Association of Community Service Boards, Incorporated, and for other purposes. Whereas in 1964, R. Darrell Gay, Ph.D., began serving the safety net of Georgia by assisting the Georgia Department of Public Health Division of Mental Health and finishing his service in the Georgia Department of Human Resources as the Director of the Division of Mental Health in 1981. And whereas he dedicated his time and resources to serving the DeKalb County Board of Health from 1981 to 1994 till the statutory creation of the DeKalb Community Service Board, where he served as the Executive First Director until 2004. And whereas he has represented the Georgia Association of Community Service Boards as a public policy advisor from 2004 to 2014. And whereas it is abundantly fitting and proper that the outstanding accomplishments of this extraordinary citizen be appropriately recognized. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize R. Darrell Gay, Ph.D., for his service to the Georgia Association of Community Service Boards, Incorporated, commended for his setting of the foundations of Georgia's public safety net system, and extend best wishes for his future success. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon the senator from the 4th to introduce our very, very special guest today.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, Dr. Darrell Gay passed away just a few days ago, February the 29th, and he was a man known far and wide in the mental health community as the father of community service boards. He had a long history of service to mental health in this state, starting with the Department of Public Health, which used to have a division called the Division of Mental Health. That evolved over the years, and he served with the DHS over the years as the Director of Mental Health, and it changed names, and eventually, as we developed community service boards, he became known as the father of community service boards in this state, Dr. Darrell Gay, Ph.D. We were supposed to honor him a couple weeks ago, but the recess that we took made that impossible, and during that time, unfortunately, Dr. Gay passed away. Our mental health community in this state has come a long way. We have a long way to go as well, but there's a concern for the for the mental health needy of this state that Dr. Gay represents. We have another person here this morning who is going to accept this resolution on behalf of him and his family, and June DiPolito from Statesboro, Georgia, who is the director of Pineland Mental Health. More than that, though, June is known as the voice of mental health in Southeast Georgia, virtually all around the state. When you need help for a family, regardless of their status or whether they qualify for any state programs, June DiPolito is the source that you call, because we know that she knows if there's a source out there that can help you in your case, June will find it for you. She is just that much dedicated to those in need in the mental health community. So at this time, I'd like to present the resolution honoring Dr. Gay to June DiPolito of Pineland Mental Health. June, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you, Senator Hill, and thank you, other senators, for the high recognition that you're giving to such an outstanding gentleman, as Senator Hill said. He originally came from Senator Hill's area, but grew up in Savannah, and then came to Emory and furthered his education, and just dedicated his whole career, his whole life, to making a difference to those with mental illness, developmental disabilities, and addictive diseases. So I'm honored to accept this today, and I'm honored to carry it to his memorial service this Wednesday, and it will be on display there, and we will give it to his family members who are coming from out of state. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for recognizing a gentleman who is so outstanding and so devoted to public service that our services that we know today would not be here if it were not for Dr. Darrell Gay. He did write most of the mental health statutes that are still standing today as well. So thank you so much for honoring Dr. Darrell Gay today, and I thank my senator who does such an outstanding job representing us, and thank you all for what you have done for those with disabilities this legislative session. Thank you so much.
All right, we've got some very special guests with us today that we'd like to recognize, and I'll call upon the senator from the 22nd to do so.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for allowing us to do this. Today we have the great men of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, men of achievement. I would like, please welcome those men of achievement here in the gallery, please. Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, which senators from the 2nd, the 10th, and also the 22nd are members of. And now I will have our Senior Province Vice Polemarch, Brian Mock of the Southeastern Province, to please say a few words.
Thank you, Senator Jones. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, Senate Chamber. We are here on behalf of Kappa Alpha Psi, an organization that was founded over 109 years ago. We represent the southeastern region of our fraternity, which comprises of Georgia, South Carolina, South Africa, Nigeria, and we will be stretching over to Abu Dhabi. We just want to come before you all to thank you for the work that you've done in the community. We believe in what the legislation is doing in the state of Georgia. We are ready to work for you, and we look forward to you working for us. We represent 2,500 brothers who are over those particular states and regions, and we want to make sure, with the help that I have behind me, which are past regional presidents and our past national president, Mr. Thomas L. Battles, we thank you for what you do for us, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 21st for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, fellow senators. I have Olivia Ruggiero
here today, and her husband Brian, and her family, her mom and dad. And Olivia is a teacher at Johnson Elementary in Woodstock. And I did a resolution to recognize Olivia. Olivia has been recognized as a member of the Class of Extraordinary Educators for 2020. This award is given to 31 teachers across the nation who exhibit best-in-class instruction in math and classroom innovation. Folks, this is a national award with only 31 recipients, and we are proud to have Olivia as a recipient. Please give a warm Senate welcome to Olivia, her husband Brian, and her family, and congratulations, Olivia. Thank you for being here. Chair recognizes the senator from the 15th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I just wanted to take a few moments to acknowledge an event in history that occurred back in 1965. You may see on your desk a post from the Saigon Post, March 8th, 1965. Actually, it was March 9th, 1965. This is when the Vietnam War really kicked off, and we were in the Gulf of Tonkin, and we got this order that there had been some kind of event in the Gulf of Tonkin, which spurred us to be landing in Vietnam the next day. I'm one of those men right there. I don't know which one, but I'm with those guys who came ashore that day. After the captain came on intercom that night and said, "This is not a drill. This is not a drill. You will lock and load." And next day, we went ashore in Vietnam. There was no shooting that day, but ultimately ended in the lives of 58,000 brave men and women who served in Vietnam, and I just thought it would not be robbery to acknowledge that today. So thank you very much for your attention. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to take a moment and thank the members of my community. We had a first responder in Alpharetta, a mom of 5, single mom, who suddenly had become homeless. She was getting the keys to a home for her and her family, but literally had no furniture and nothing to put the house together. Within a matter of a couple hours, from a few email addresses and a Facebook post, we had beds for that entire family and bedding, dressers, desks, television, a couch, a washer, a dryer. The community from Sandy Springs, Alpharetta, Roswell, Johns Creek, Milton, and as far as Woodstock came together to help out one of our heroes in need. I'm so proud of my community and so thankful for them, and I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have with us in the gallery today members from the Georgia Municipal Court Judges Association, including one of my constituents from Berkeley Lake and the chairman of their legislative committee, Judge Charles Barrett. Along with him is their president, Judge Bubba Samuels, their president-elect, Judge Willie Weaver Sr., and a member of their legislative committee and a good friend of mine, Judge Margaret Washburn. Judges, if you would please stand to be recognized. Thank you so much for all the great work you do for the people of Georgia. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the pro tem for a point of personal privilege. Pro tem has waived for now. Chair recognizes the senator from the 14th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. Today I'm honored to have my daughter back here. She's on break from Sanford. Many of you have seen Faith kind of grow up in this chamber. She's got Alan with her today, so a special day for Dad to be able to have her daughter with her.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I want to visit with you briefly on the hate crimes legislation. I'd almost love to see a show of hands. How many people knew we had a hate crimes bill in the breast of the Judiciary Committee over here that's been here since last year, that passed with only, I think, a handful of no's in the House with a Republican sponsor? That bill has come over here and has seen nothing but silence. And I don't know if you all knew that, and I wanted to tell you, and I wanted to share with you that we are one of only 4 states in this entire nation that fails to protect its citizens against hate crimes. And it's time for us to do better. It's time for us to do the right thing. Every 90 minutes, a hate crime is committed in the U.S. And the damage, of course, of hate crimes is it's to intimidate an entire community. It is directed at an individual, but it's to send a message. Keep your head down and keep out of our way, or we'll be after you. I passed the first hate crimes bill that we had in the House. I was in the House then, and it passed the Senate. And we passed a version that was the Governor George Bush's version out of Texas, feeling that that would be a fit for Georgia. It was not a very strong bill. It was inadequate. The courts ruled that we needed to redo our hate crimes bill because when cases were brought, it lacked the teeth that it needed. It was too vague. And so the courts here in Georgia ruled that our hate crimes bill was not enforceable. That's why we need to do it over. Now, we just heard from a rabbi. We all sat here and listened to his message and to the fact of how they were spurred by the Tree of Life Synagogue building being invaded by gunmen in Pittsburgh. 11 worshipers murdered in 3 congregations that were meeting there. This is real. This is going on now. We need to move this bill. Now, nearly 50% of race-based hate crimes were directed towards African Americans in the statistics. Hate crimes against the LGBTQ individuals has increased by almost 6%. Anti-Hispanic hate crimes increased 14%. The 3rd straight year of increased reporting. It is time for us to act. Law enforcement supports hate crimes bills. 26 state general attorneys, 14 major law enforcement organizations supported the bill on the federal level. Hate crimes punish criminal conduct and not speech. There cannot be a hate crime without a perpetrator committing an underlying crime such as assault, vandalism, or arson. So are we going to go on record as a Senate saying that we cannot update Georgia's hate crimes bill to make it have the fangs that it needs to make it meet the court's request? I say we're better than that. I say it's time to move the hate crimes bill, give it the full hearing and give it the vote in committee, and let's see where we stand as a Senate. Thank you so much.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, I have 2 things to mention to you all this morning. The first is to let you know that there's going to be a special needs art exhibit in the South Wing tomorrow from 8 to 12, and I would highly encourage you to go down there. The second thing is regarding coronavirus testing and treatment. And what I wanted to tell you is that over the weekend, the governor's office, Insurance Commissioner John King's office, the task force members, and the insurance industry have been working together to try to be sure that Georgians get what they need. And so I have 2 documents here with me. One is a press release that's from the insurance commissioner's office, and they're asking health insurers who provide coverage to Georgia residents to take a number of different measures related to testing and treatment of coronavirus, including waiving the co-pays for lab testing. The second document that I have is from the American health insurance plans, and they are cooperating with the requests of the insurance commissioner. And I just wanted to be sure that you know that there are a lot of people working together on this, and that Georgians are going to get what they need. Thank you. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the pro tem. For a privileged, point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the moment. I appreciate it very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here this morning to recognize and honor Miss Nancy Flake Johnson. Ms. Johnson is President and CEO of the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. She's co-chair of the National Urban League on Jobs Task Force. She joined the leadership of the Urban League in Detroit in 2006. Previous to that, she operated the Howard University Small Business Development Center. Ms. Johnson, please stand up. She serves on the City Council Workforce and Development of Atlanta. She's co-chair of the National Urban League's Task Force. She's on the MARTA Advisory Expansion Committee. But more than that, more than all this, she is a woman of poise and dignity and determination and compassion that has helped literally hundreds of thousands of Americans and tens of thousands of Georgians get on their feet, gain their independence, and gain their dignity and their self-respect and their self-reliance. Please give Ms. Johnson a warm Senate welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. This morning I would like to offer a warm welcome to officials from the city of Lawrenceville who are here today. I know that the House is going to be offering some congratulations on our former mayor, Mayor Johnson. I did that in the interim as well upon her retirement, but I believe the mayor is here today, Mr. David Still, and if y'all just stand up, everybody, so we can welcome you all, everybody from Lawrenceville. Let it be clear that my replacement, Keith Roche, is here as well when I served in Post 4 on the City of Lawrenceville City Council. I also rise on this day because 15 years ago, my daughter was born. She's become a lovely young woman. She has a heart for others, and that's what I love most about her. I'm so proud of her work ethic, both in her swimming and in her schoolwork, her steady attitude, the way that she loves her friends, her sense of humor, and most importantly, her heart for our Lord Jesus Christ. Happy birthday, Charlotte. I love you. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, senators. Thank you for all your prayers and love to my sister. I found out when I was here at the Capitol a few days ago last week that she had passed in her sleep, and I had just talked to her after midnight the night before. So she had an aneurysm, we found out. But thank you, and the funeral is this Friday. But I didn't stand for this. I stand to welcome Mothers Against Drunk Drivers under the Golden Dome today at 1 o'clock. Pictures of victims of DUI will be on display on the South Wing as they have a little short program at 1. So if you can come through, maybe you will even see some of the people from your particular districts who are here, who have lost their loved ones, and who are continuing to thank you for making Georgia have some of the strongest DUI laws, but apparently they're not strong enough because we're still continuing to lose so many lives from drunk and distracted drivers who become impaired after drinking and choose to get behind the wheel of a car and take the lives of either themselves or others on the road. So maybe one day Georgia will be strong enough in our laws to say we have no drunk drivers and we have no deaths from driving under the influence. Also, I want to thank I don't know if they're still up there, but today is Douglas County Day at the Capitol, and all our Douglas County officials came for the senator from the 30th and myself, who represent portions of Douglas County, and we welcome our different leaders who came, elected officials from Douglas, as well as business leaders with the Chamber of Commerce. So thanks again, everyone, for this great day, and God bless you all, and thank you for all your love and prayers.
Thank you, Senator. You have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Chair sees none. Is there objection to adoption of the resolution on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? You have a consent calendar of local bills before you. Mr. Secretary, are there any objections filed to any bill on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed.
Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the Committee on State and Local Government, which is favorable to the passage of the bill on the local consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Questions on the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar. All those in favor will vote yea, opposed nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. I like you. Gooch looks distracted. On the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar, the yeas are 51, the nays are 1, and the bills having received the requisite constitutional majority are therefore passed. Chair recognizes the majority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that the following bills be engrossed: Senate Bill 369 and Senate Resolution 459.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption?
Senate Bill number 369 by Senator Payne of 54th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Code Section 485511 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to returns of public utilities to Commissioner of Department of Revenue, itemization of fair market value of property, other information, and apportionment to more than one tax jurisdiction so as to require electronic transmission of returns to Department of Revenue by public utilities to provide for related matters and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 27, 2020, the Senate Committee on Finance recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted by Senator Huffstetler, 52nd Chair. Senate Resolution 459 by Senator Mullis of 53rd and others. Resolution requesting that all persons testifying before the Senate tell the truth, providing for bans on persons found to have lied to the Senate from providing future testimony to the Senate and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The Majority Leader has asked for unanimous consent that the Senate Bill 369 and Senate Resolution 459 be engrossed. Is there objection? There is objection. Would the Majority Leader like to speak to his motion? Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Everybody in the chamber understands, but just so that we're clear, for the last 27 years, ethics bills and finance bills have been engrossed for the obvious reasons. Neither one of these bills is controversial. Matter of fact, both bills came out of committee unanimously. So they're bipartisan. I understand the desire of my good friend, the minority leader, into making sure that in the future, when we have less controversial bills, that they have an objection noted. These are not either of those. Thank you.
Majority Leader has yielded the well. Would the Minority Leader like to speak to his objection? He waives. All those in favor of engrossing Senate Bill 369 and Senate Resolution 459, vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. I was trying to think if we could engross the vote at the same time. For some reason, I'm thinking we can take On the motion to engross Senate Resolution 459 and Senate Bill 369, the yeas are 33, the nays are 21. The motion has passed. SR 459 and SB 369 are engrossed. Before we move on to the rules calendar, we have a very, very special guest that many of you recognize. Former Sergeant at Arms John Long is with us today. Thank you very much for joining us. All right, we are now moving on to the rules calendar. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption for Senate Resolution 459?
Senate Resolution number 459 by Senator Mullis of the 53rd and others. A resolution requesting that all persons testifying before the Senate tell the truth, providing for bans on persons found to have lied to the Senate from providing future testimony to the Senate and for other purposes. Mr. President, on March 3rd, 2020, the Senate Committee on Ethics recommends that this resolution do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Ethics Committee offers the following substitute to Senate Resolution 459, a resolution requesting that all persons testifying before the Senate tell the truth, providing for sanctions for persons found to have lied to the Senate and for other purposes. Continue. And for other purposes. That completes order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd to speak to Senate Resolution 459.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm happy to bring you a bipartisan bill with a lot of good help with this. Let me first start off by saying, I pledge to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Or, I affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, or nothing but the truth. Or, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. There are many ways that this can be taking place. This is a May for a committee chair to offer the oath for people to just simply tell the truth. This is not a lying bill. This is what your mom and dad taught you, to tell the truth. They do it in Congress, they do it in the court of law. Now, we're not a court of law, but we make the laws. Don't you think it's important for us to have the truth when we're trying to put good laws together so we have the right information? And of course, we know that things may happen accidentally, but knowingly, this requires people to tell the truth, from just general citizens to agency heads to lobbyists to government affairs people, whoever. Now, we are under this according to the Constitution, and I'd say our pledge when we were sworn in office. But, Mr. President, I think this is actually simple. If somebody is found guilty of misrepresenting the truth, the Ethics Committee will make judgment of what should happen, probably losing their ability to testify for the rest of the session. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 38th for a question. To your left.
Okay, at least I
Yes,
can pull
yes,
it up.
ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said we tell, excuse me, not we. They tell the truth in Congress?
Well, let me say they're supposed to. They take a pledge that their testimony will be truthful. Now, you know, what do you do? Anybody can lie, right? People lie to you all the time, some accidentally, some knowingly. But I hope this is a deterrent to make sure they tell the truth.
And you are pushing this because we are seeing people coming to testify before us and give us truthful information that we later found out was not exactly the truth?
Well, that does happen occasionally, and I witnessed something, I think Thursday or Friday last week that could have been as this too.
Well, I thank you so very much for bringing this, and hopefully this will make a change in what people say to us and make sure that it is truthful. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman,
Thank
for this
you,
piece of
Senator.
legislation.
You have no more questions.
Thank you very much. I would appreciate your support.
The chair recognizes the senator from the 48th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to ask for your support for Senate Resolution 459, which calls on people testifying before this Senate to be truthful. As you will recall, this is a bipartisan bill with folks on both sides of the aisle signing off on as co-sponsors. So it is truly a bipartisan effort. As we all know, we rely on those who speak to us about legislation, whether they be paid lobbyists or interested members of the public, to inform us of the issues facing Georgia and to help us make decisions that improve the lives of our constituents. As a former federal prosecutor and now a member of this Senate, I have been concerned by an increasing sense that misleading and even lying about facts is justified to advance a political agenda. Our system of self-government depends on citizens believing they have an obligation to be truthful when interacting with our public institutions. This resolution is an effort to strengthen that sense that we must all be truthful in our communications with government. This resolution does not punish the expression of an opinion. People who come before us with testimony will see things differently, and reasonable minds can see the same facts in different ways. But there is a distinction between a difference of opinion and willfully misleading and misrepresenting facts to this Senate. This resolution strongly requests that all persons appearing before us be truthful, and if we determine they have not been, they can be barred for the remainder of our session from testifying. That is both a reasonable request and a reasonable sanction for those who might intentionally mislead us. I ask you to join in supporting this important resolution. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair sees none. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is on the adoption of the resolution by substitute. All those in favor of the resolution will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the adoption of the resolution by substitute, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted by substitute. It did. Something just flew off of it. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption to Senate Bill 318?
Senate Bill number 318 by Senator Ligon of the 3rd and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to education generally, so as to provide for public forums at public institutions of higher education, prevent the creation of free speech zones at public institutions of higher education, to require public institutions of higher education to develop materials, programs, and procedures related to expressive activity, provide for penalties, to provide for limitation period, to provide for a waiver of immunities, to provide for legislative findings and intent, to provide for short title, and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 27, 2020, the Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass by substitute, respectfully submitted by Senator Stone of the 23rd chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 318, a bill to be titled an act to amend Title 20 of the OCGA relating to education generally, so as to provide for public forums at public institutions of higher education within the University System of Georgia and the Technical College System of Georgia for the campus community, to prevent the creation of free speech zones at such public institutions of higher education and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senator Beach of the 21st offers the following amendment number 1 to amend committee substitute to Senate Bill 318 by new section 5 after line 279. Research universities of the University System of Georgia shall ensure that not less than 85% of early action admissions are offered to Georgia resident students. Re-number section 5 and accordingly. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 3rd to speak to Senate Bill 318.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I bring before you the Forum Act, and this will protect and clarify the First Amendment rights that our students should enjoy on our public colleges and universities. And it does this by first protecting 3 things: what students can speak, where they can speak, and with whom they speak with. It protects what students can say and speak by ensuring that a public college or university may not ban students from engaging in expressive activity on campus so long as their conduct is lawful and does not disrupt the functioning of the college or university. It protects where they speak by banning these so-called free speech zones, or areas of campus that are designated for free speech, meaning that you can't speak in any other open public forums. And it also clarifies that universities can impose published reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on speech that are content neutral and not directed toward a specific group. And finally, it protects students who can speak, with whom students can speak, by protecting the freedom of association, which ensures that student groups can require their leaders and members to agree to live and abide by policies that are consistent with that group's values or beliefs. Mr. President, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
Yes.
Isn't it true these protections already exist in law, and therefore this is not necessary?
Well, actually, they are necessary because the state, since 2009, the state has paid well over $1 million to attorneys and students for damages caused by violations of these infringements. And some of these suits were filed as recently as a couple of years ago. And I understand that there may be more on the way. So, and what we find is that in states that have enacted this legislation, that these infringements on these rights stop, because the bill makes it clear that administrators and schools are not to violate these policies. So I would say that it's very necessary. Otherwise, we're wasting money on these things, money that could be put to good use educating our students here in Georgia.
Does the chairman further yield?
Yes.
On lines 102 and 234, you specifically delineate religious, political, or ideological student organizations. Why are you singling out these types of student organizations?
Well, that's in the freedom of association piece, and if you'd like to take those out, that would be fine, but we're making it clear that those types of groups should be free to require their members to adhere to their common values.
May I further?
Yes.
So you're amenable to taking out religious, political, or ideological?
No, I'm just saying, if you want to open it up to all of them, you can, but I think this is what's worked in other states and locations, and I think we should keep it as it is, but I think that those groups should free to have their criteria that they want their members to adhere to.
Gentleman, further yield?
Yes.
Isn't it true that the public colleges in Georgia already have non-discrimination policies that are being administered by the public colleges?
Well, but it has been an issue in some of our colleges where groups, particular religious groups, have been told that they can't organize, or their memberships have been threatened because they wanted their members to adhere to the tenets of their faith. And so that's simply not right. It's not consistent with First Amendment jurisprudence that people should be free to associate with members that share the same values and to be able to speak with one voice. You know, go ahead.
Do you further yield?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Isn't it further true that there is a separation of church and state, and that this bill could jeopardize federal funding for the public colleges?
Oh, I disagree with that strenuously. That is not certainly the policy, and in fact, recent Supreme Court cases have indicated that the states are not to discriminate against religious organizations, and if a group, let's say a faith-based group, says we want our members to adhere to these values, then they should. And think about this. If they're in the minority and you say, oh, no, you can't, you have to admit everyone and allow everyone to be a part of your membership. And so then you have groups come in and they dilute that membership. So then you effectively silence the voice of that minority group. And that's wrong. And what the First Amendment does not do that. It protects the rights of the minorities to speak. And that's why this bill is consistent with good First Amendment jurisprudence.
Do you further yield?
Yes.
Isn't it true that your same organization, though, could meet off campus and not receive federal or state funding? What you're proposing is that these organizations be on campus and
Right.
benefit from federal and state funding,
But
correct?
Senator, you're ignoring what recent Supreme Court jurisprudence has said, is that you can't discriminate against these groups, that they're entitled to apply for and receive funding just as well as, say, a chess group can.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Do you continue to yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 10th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, I am trying to find a way to support this bill, but can you tell me on line 102, I am familiar with religious organizations and political organizations. How would you define an ideological organization?
Well, I would say that's pretty close to a political organization. It may not be in terms of a Republican Party or the Democrat Party, but it may be more issue-oriented. Let's say you could have an environmental group that wants to really advocate for certain environmental policies. Then they would certainly come under this category. So,
Senator Further Yield?
yes.
Senator, I was looking at the definition for ideology because I was trying to figure it out myself, and according to Webster's, it says a body of doctrine, a myth, a belief, and etc. that guides an individual, social movement, or institution, class, or large group. The thing that struck me about this definition was the word myth that's in there. So is it conceivable that an ideological group could be based on something that's not related to facts?
Well, it could be. That group may determine that they may believe that it is fact. It's based on their belief. And, the way that you combat that is not by restricting the freedom of association or free speech, but by encouraging more speech. And that's how ideas are exposed, debated, truths are revealed, falsehoods are revealed by having more speech and encouraging more dialogue. So, I'm not afraid of having more free speech. I think we need to have, that's the great thing about this country, this state, and we need to encourage this as much as possible. So,
Senator Further Yield?
yes.
But Senator, a myth is clearly something that hasn't been proven, potentially could be a lie. Is that correct?
Sure, absolutely. And I'm going to first admit there are a lot of ideologies that were based on lies. But you know what? When you silence the ability to criticize that or have debate, then the myth is perpetuated. But opening up to debate and ensuring that all speech is protected and covered helps reveal falsehood and brings enlightenment to the public and the population. And in this case, it brings enlightenment to our student campuses, to those that are on.
Senator Further Yield?
Yes.
Shouldn't we do that in the Senate? We just passed a resolution previous to your bill that speaks about lying. Can you understand the dichotomy here, the issues that I'm facing when we just discussed lying, but now we're saying it's okay to do it in this kind of a setting on a college campus?
They're different settings. The one here is in a lawmaking body, just like it is in a courtroom. And we want people to tell the truth because we're making policies and decisions. The other is in an atmosphere where there's learning taking place. And it is a fact that in the real world that people try to advance myths and lies and ideologies that are based on falsehoods. I mean, there's been a lot of, unfortunately, there's been a lot of tragedy in this world because of ideologies that were based on falsehoods. But the best remedy for this is by saying we're going to encourage debate and free speech, and we're not going to shut down one particular view and say you can't speak to it because we think that it's not true or false. Because then you're giving a lot of power to the person or the group that gets to determine what is true and what is false. It is always best to encourage that open discussion so that people can see and debate and understand and make decisions for themselves as to what is true and what is false. And that's why we want to protect this very important right. So I understand what you're saying, but in my opinion, the remedy is more speech.
Senator Further Yield?
Yes.
Senator, I respectfully disagree with you, but I'm going to move on to line 108. And it says on line 108, affirm and adhere to the organization's sincerely held beliefs.
Correct.
And I tend to have a problem with organizations that may have beliefs that are sincerely held that may be counter to what we may be accustomed to as members of the minority community, members of, say, an LGBTQ community, members of any other organization, does this bill give those other organizations the right to speak out vehemently against those other groups?
Yes, and actually this bill protects the very organizations that you just mentioned. And let me explain why. The opposite of this bill would be to have what's called an all-comers policy. That is where a group cannot have any standards or criteria for membership. So let's say that you had a group that's part of the minority population, and they want to come together and to be able to talk about their ideas, and then to go out into the public and express those ideas in an open forum. But if you have an all-comers policy, then you can have people who come in who disagree with that point of view. And they can come in and they can saturate that organization and effectively silence that organization, so that those people in that small minority group no longer have their voice. So I think that the concern that you're expressing is actually protected and enhanced by this bill. The right to speak with one voice is protected. And that is a very important principle in First Amendment jurisprudence that has been recognized by our courts. So I would hope that you would support the bill because of that.
Senator Yale?
Yes.
Senator, I'm trying to find a way to support it, but I'm not quite there yet.
I'm trying to help you, Senator.
I'm not quite there yet. Senator, given what you already said is in the First Amendment, then why do we need this particular bill? Why are we instructing our colleges and universities?
Sure.
And I'm not sure I've heard any problems from any college president that said this is an issue.
Well, it can be an issue. And, you know, when you're having to pay $900,000 to a student at one of our colleges because he wanted to protest the construction of a new parking lot on that campus for environmental reasons, and he's effectively silenced by these policies that you say that shouldn't happen, that's not right. It denies that student his rights, but then it's going to cost the taxpayer and the university money that could be spent on educating our children. Why not let's articulate these principles in a state law so that it's clear, so that people don't have to go running and looking at court cases, and they know exactly what is proper and what is not proper, and that way we don't have these problems anymore. And I can tell you, in states that have passed this law, these issues go away. It helps bring clarity and understanding so that everyone can see and know what is right under First Amendment jurisprudence.
Senator Year, one final question.
Yes, sir.
Senator, are you concerned about giving voice to any of those fringe elements, those fringe groups?
You know, the thing about the First Amendment is that there is speech that is absolutely nauseating, and it turns the stomach, and it's offensive. But that speech is protected under the First Amendment. And the way to deal with that is by ensuring that we have more speech to expose the ugliness, the falsehood, and to allow the truth to shine. And that's what this bill is about. Otherwise, we allow other people to determine what speech is proper and what speech is not proper. And sometimes you have someone saying, oh, we're not going to hear about that speech that is good and right and true. I would rather have the system where we can all freely speak and expose and debate those ideas. That's the real world that we live in. That real world should be reflected on college campuses so that our students have clarity about what is right and what a benefit and a blessing they have because of our First Amendment rights. So,
thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator, you have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll yield the will.
We have 2 amendments filed. I'll call on the senator from the 21st. Actually, Mr. Secretary, will you please read the amendment? Amendment number 2.
Senator Cowsert of the 46th and others offer the following amendment number 2 to amend Senate Committee on Judiciary Substitute to Senate Bill 318 by deleting the quotation mark at the end of line 133 and inserting after line 134 the following. N, nothing in this part shall prohibit public institutions of higher education, including but not limited to athletic department administrators and coaching staffs, from requiring student athletes to comply with athletic department or team policies, rules, and regulations, or from implementing disciplinary consequences according to such policies, rules, and regulations for violations thereof by any student athlete governed by such policies, rules, and regulations. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair calls upon the senator from the 21st to speak to amendment number 1. Oh, sorry. No, you're speaking to amendment number 1, the senator from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, I bring before you this amendment to keep Georgia kids first and keep our kids in Georgia. Let me tell you, the Hope Scholarship has done great things. It's been a huge success. It's kept our best and brightest here. It's allowed kids to go to college that otherwise couldn't afford it, and it's elevated our universities. Let me be very clear, I'm not trying to lower standards here. And let me also be clear, I'm not advocating that we go from 33,000 students at Georgia to 80,000 like Ohio State and expanding our universities. But I can tell you, each one of you have gotten calls, can you help my kid get in Georgia or Georgia Tech? And I will tell you, I had an example this year where I had a student with a 4.1, a 1450 SAT, a 33 ACT, and 10 AP classes, did not get in Georgia. She got into Vanderbilt, Tulane, and got scholarship to Tennessee. During our hearing in higher ed, the senator from the 17th asked the Georgia Tech president, if you had 2 kids, one from out of state and one from Georgia, and they were exactly equal, AP classes, SAT, ACT, and grade point, which one would you choose? And to his credit, he was honest. He said he'd take the kid from out of state to get that kid already in Georgia and keep him from going to UC, Berkeley, or MIT. Well, if that kid's qualified and they have the same exact, we may lose our kid to MIT or Cal Berkeley. And I want to put our kids first. And that's what this is all about. The senator from the 56th, his kid's going to Alabama this year, and I believe he had way over a 4.0. So we spend $125,000 on our students K through 12, and then we let them go to schools out of state with the risk that they never come back. Now, we're the #1 state to do business, and that didn't happen by accident. That's because we've kept our best and brightest here, and I want to maintain being the best state to do business. This is good policy for hardworking Georgians and hardworking Georgian students. Mr. President, I'll yield the well if there are no questions.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
For what purpose does the senator from the 1st rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I asked the President if the Senate Bill 318, this Senate amendment, would like to question its germaneness.
Are you referring to amendment number 1?
Yes.
Please stand by for a moment while we contemplate the question. All right, the chamber will come back to order. The chair has examined the amendment and listened to the arguments made and is prepared to rule. The fundamental purpose of the underlying bill is on free speech on university campuses. The fundamental purpose of the amendment is to set a minimum threshold for early action to admission. Therefore, the chair rules that this is not germane. Amendment number 1 is ruled non-germane. Chair recognizes the senator from the 46th to speak to amendment number 2.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, pleased to bring to you today Amendment 2. This is really just a clarification of the underlying bill to make it clear that team sports are different than individual expression. And it detracts from the cohesiveness, the discipline, the teamwork of a team for an individual to put their own needs and their own opinions and their own expression ahead of the team and team rules and team discipline. I remember back when Herschel Walker was a freshman at the University of Georgia, he had a t-shirt he wore that summer. The whole team wore them, as a matter of fact, as they were beginning their preseason workouts, had big team, little me. And that is the definition of team sports. You're putting your interests subservient to the team as a whole. That's part of what you learn. That's part of every successful team, is the individuals are pulling together for a common purpose rather than expressing their individual opinions. This amendment just makes it clear that insofar as student athletes engaged in their sport, their practices, their performances, they will be subject to administration rules, coaching staff's rules on teams' policies, rules, and regulations that might limit their freedom of expression during the athletic performances. This is naturally aimed directly at things such as kneeling during the national anthem, wearing a swastika on the sleeve of your uniform, wearing the eye black like Tim Tebow did with the John 3:16. All of those are different elements of personal expression to the detriment of the team, and this allows the organizations, the athletic departments and teams to have their own rules, policies, regulations that can, in those limited areas, limit the freedom of speech of an athlete. It is a privilege to play college sports. It is not a right. This would not restrict their ability to write letters to the editor of their student newspapers, to participate in protests, marches, rallies, anything else outside of their athletic competition. So I would urge each of you to support this clarifying amendment. As I think the author of the bill would expect that it's already covered, but this will keep courts from any ambiguity in the future in their interpretation of this bill. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 18th for a question. I see a giggling senator to my left. You have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th to speak to the bill or the amendment, or both.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to urge you to vote against Senate Bill 318. Make no mistake, this legislation is an effort to force Georgia taxpayers to support organizations on college campuses that discriminate against our fellow citizens. That discrimination could be based on sexual orientation, on religion, on someone having a disability, or any other variety of reasons. In 2020, this is simply unacceptable. College is a time when people's horizons are broadened and everyone learns from exposure to people of different backgrounds, beliefs, and perspectives. I know that when I went from my hometown of Lafayette, Georgia, across the country to the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado, I didn't even know or comprehend how much I would learn from people who came from places I couldn't even imagine or had never even heard of. I would hate to see our public colleges in Georgia denied the ability to ensure that same experience for our students. My daughter is a freshman at the University of Georgia this year, and as a mom and as a taxpayer, I want her to have every opportunity to participate in any organization which she chooses, and I don't want her joining an organization that discriminates, nor having our universities complicit in discrimination. Our state and public college system has come way too far to pass a bill that forces taxpayers to subsidize discrimination. I strongly urge you to oppose this bill. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. The chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the senator from the 48th just elucidated, the real issue with this legislation is that it prohibits a university from enforcing a non-discrimination or all-comers policy. The Supreme Court held in Christian Legal Society versus Martinez that a non-discrimination policy in place by the University of California, Hastings, I believe, was constitutional, and it was not a violation of the First Amendment. That policy required that student organizations admit all those that wanted to join. What this bill would do is provide that these all-comers policies would not be acceptable. And what's the problem with that? Well, right as it stands, university groups are permitted to meet on campus, and free speech is protected, as has already been mentioned by several other speakers. We already have that, of course, in the First Amendment and in existing law. But groups right now, if the university so chose to have a non-discrimination policy, they would not necessarily be eligible for certain taxpayer-funded benefits. They might be allowed to meet, but maybe not be receiving taxpayer funding in the sense of receiving student activity fees, for example. What's the issue with that? Well, the student activity fees are paid for by all students at the university, so a university might logically rationalize, well, we're only going to have all of us pay into the pot taxpayer student funding for organizations go to organizations where every student can join. It shouldn't be an issue of whether or not the university allows certain groups to meet that are political, religious, or ideological. It would more be a matter of, are they receiving money out of the pot that goes to everybody? The University System of Georgia made many, many good points as to why they are very concerned about this legislation during our 2 committee hearings in the Judiciary Committee on this legislation. The bottom line is the University System of Georgia takes very seriously its obligation to provide policies that are non-discriminatory and that allow all different kinds of speech to be aired on their campuses, as they should. And as a matter of fact, it's a great thing in the senator from the third's bill that the free speech zones were going to be eliminated. We do have to take very seriously that we're not trying to stanch speech that people don't agree with. I agree with the senator from the third that more speech is certainly one counterpoint to that can allow the free exchange of ideas, and one can try to win someone that disagrees with them over to their side. That's really not the issue in this bill. The issue comes down to, can a university have a non-discrimination policy in place that they enforce by not allowing taxpayer money to follow it? That's really the main issue. So after we passed legislation a year or 2 ago, the University System of Georgia put into place, as they had before, but they updated and educated their universities at higher level on what the free speech policies are, the ones that they had put into place. They have a comprehensive report on free speech that they shared with us that was issued July 1st, 2019. Here's the thing. I think the University System of Georgia is very careful and very thoughtful. I don't take lightly the concerns that their lawyer brought forth to us as senators during the committee hearings. They understand their campuses, they understand the students who are on their campuses, and what we are essentially saying is that we know better how they should handle free speech with a blanket policy out of us, and we don't trust them at all to know their students and protect their free speech rights. And, you know, I have some concerns with that. And I certainly have a lot of heartburn voting for something that the university system has said is going to expose them to more litigation. They've offered some suggestions. The Senator from the 3rd did accept some of their suggestions, but a few other key ones are left in place. And so, you know, we just need to think very seriously about who understands the intricacies of free speech on campuses the best. I would posit to you that the University System of Georgia understands them. And if there is a university that does want to say we want to have a non-discrimination policy, an all-comers policy, we don't want taxpayer funds to flow if an organization is discriminating, that's perfectly acceptable. And so I'll be voting no and ask that you also oppose this legislation. And Mr. President, I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 31st for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that you are on the Judiciary Committee?
It is.
Isn't it true that we had a number of students come to committee to testify about this bill?
I'm trying to remember back to our first hearing.
I'll help you a little bit. There were
Okay,
5
yeah,
or
help me out.
6,
Okay.
7 students came to testify. Do you recall any of those students speaking against the bill?
I'm struggling. What I remember most from that hearing, because I believe I had to step out for a few minutes, so I'll have you refresh my memory. What I remember is the University System of Georgia's attorney having a really lengthy presentation, and I do remember the groups that were sitting with our senator, the senator from the 3rd, at the beginning of as he walked through the bill.
For the sake of attempting to abide by the rules, isn't it true that all the students that spoke in committee spoke in favor of the bill? Thank you.
Do you continue to yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Hill.
I do.
Senator, in addition to the bill that you've just addressed that was in Judiciary Committee, it's true, isn't it, that we also are looking at Amendment 2, which was just presented by the senator from the 46th.
That is true.
And that goes in another direction. It seems to say that coaches can take away First Amendment rights if you're on a team. Is that the?
That is how I read it, Senator. It seemed like we're sort of two minds here. We want to be able to prohibit free speech when it has to do with athletic departments, and otherwise we're trying to add other protections for religious, political, or ideological groups. So I guess we're a little schizophrenic on this issue, apparently, here a little bipolar in the Georgia Senate.
So it's neither one of us are psychiatrists or psychologists, but you are a learned attorney. Would you be supporting Amendment 2?
I think I'll be opposing that one for the reason I just said.
Thank you very much.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 10th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is Senator Yield?
I certainly do, to the chairman of the DeKalb delegation.
Thank you. Senator, I just want to ask a question from an expert attorney like yourself regarding the First Amendment. Aren't there limits on the First Amendment? For example, I've heard the analogy where you can't go into a theater and scream fire.
Yes, Senator, you're correct. There certainly are, within the First Amendment, there's certainly a lot of Supreme Court jurisprudence, constitutional jurisprudence that lays out guidelines for time, place, and manner restrictions when free speech is going to infringe on people's safety, as in the example you just mentioned. That would be an example. But generally, you know, they should be, the time, place, and manner restrictions should be as non-restrictive as possible to elevate the purpose of the First Amendment to the extent possible.
Thank you. Senator Yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, looking at line 102 and the words ideology and the discussion that I just had with the author of this legislation, does that give you any heartburn or?
It does, Senator. As a matter of fact, I thought it would be more appropriate, and this was also, has been part of the discussion, that limiting that to religious groups might make more sense under the First Amendment, given the very sacred place that religion and freedom of religion holds within our Constitution and our country. But the ideological, I did think that term was a little bit ripe for some abuse, because almost anything could be argued to be ideological. And so I did have some serious questions about the usage of that term being in the legislation.
Senator Further,
Yes.
Senator, was I correct when I said fringe elements could seize on this language and abuse this particular legislation if it just happened to become law?
I agree with you that the term ideological could be ripe for litigation, more litigation, and abuse.
That's an interesting comment, Senator Further.
Yes.
So you think this bill would spur more litigation, not less?
I think it's quite possible that it would.
Thank you, Senator.
Chair, do you continue to yield?
Certainly.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 3rd for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes, to the chairman.
So, Senator, you're advocating for basically an all-comers policy on our university campuses.
Not necessarily. What I'm saying is I don't want us in a place where we forbid an all-comers policy.
So if you're not, so then you are advocating for an all-comers policy.
No, I'm advocating that the universities be able to handle this themselves in these, very complex.
So your position is that if a university wanted to implement an all-comers policy, it's okay with you?
It might be okay with me. I don't know what exactly the policy would be.
But an all-comers policy really does not reflect the real world that we live in here in this country with respect to First Amendment rights and the right to freedom of association, right?
It depends on how the specifics of whatever the policy is that you might be laying out. And that's why I trust the University System of Georgia, having just released their campus free speech report, to be in a position to know exactly what the groups are, what they're advocating for, and what taxpayer or just regular student space benefits should be available to them.
So, but you do agree that a all-comers policy could have the effect of diluting the voice of certain minority groups.
Well,
they
it
don't have a
depends,
large
because
membership, correct?
there are other, as I understand it, there are other aspects of federal law that allow certain groups to have, for example, single gender membership. So.
Well, I mean, that's why we have fraternities and sororities, right? And so an all-comers policy could conceivably wipe that out.
Well, which is why I'm saying I'm not up here advocating for an all-comers policy.
But in
I
other...
I said I didn't want to forbid universities from having a non-discrimination policy in place. Right. I was talking about all-comers policy because that was the type of policy at issue in Christian Legal Services versus Martinez.
But in that case, all the court did was say that if you want to have an all-comers policy, you can, but if you don't want to have an all-comers policy, that's okay too.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
And so the point is, what's better? What's the better way to let our students learn about what the First Amendment is all about? Is it better to have an all-comers policy or to have one that recognizes the right of freedom of association? Which do you think is better?
I think that there's a legitimate question to be raised, and that's what I'm trying to raise before this body, about whether individual members want to support something that would make it difficult to enforce a non-discrimination policy with regard to political or to ideological or religious student groups as it pertains to taxpayer funding.
So let me ask you, Senator, which policy do you think best protects the rights of minority groups to express their voice as one? I mean, you do agree that a group coming together to speak certainly has a louder voice than just one individual person.
Well, I don't think it's by having a blanket exemption in state law that gives the universities less leeway to manage the complex conversations that are also ever changing.
So let me give you an example. Do you agree that under an all-comers policy, let's say that there's an environmental group that wanted to speak against a certain project that's coming to their area, and they may have 10 members on a college campus that has 10,000 students. Under an all-comers policy, isn't it true that all you need is 11 people that might disagree with them to come to their meetings, and all of a sudden their ability to speak on that issue is diluted because their positions are changed. They're effectively silenced by that all-comers policy.
Well, I mean, the senator raises interesting points. I'm not aware that we have any situations right now with all-comers policies essentially destroying any student groups on campus the way your example suggests. Because I'm not, to repeat, I'm not taking the position in favor of all-comers policies. I'm taking the position that we don't need to, that we can allow University System of Georgia to assess non-discrimination policies at their level.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you, Senator.
You have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair sees none. Chair recognizes the senator from the 3rd to close debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, really the issue and the point of disagreement on this bill deals with the freedom of association. And the question is, what is the best way to teach our students and to let them experience one of the most fundamental rights that we have in this country, and that is the right to freedom of speech. And within that right is the freedom of association, the ability to come together to speak to a common issue, a common cause, and then to be able to articulate that in a unified voice to our community, to our state, and to our nation. This all-comers policy that has been embraced in some states, and frankly that has been attempted to be embraced on some university campuses in this state, does not do that. And what if it effectively does, it silences voices. And I've heard a lot of statements here about concerns about silencing minority groups. Let me tell you, friends, the way that you protect that is on college campuses, is by embracing this bill and voting for it. If you say that, oh, we want to allow all-comers policies here and let a university decide whether they want to have an all-comers policy or not, you're saying we're going to allow a system to be set up where if an administration doesn't like a certain point of view, they can silence it through that all-comers policy. Because it would be very easy for those who oppose that point of view or that position to come in and overwhelm it, and that voice is silenced, those voices are diluted, and unfortunately the result is that our students learn about a system and learn to function in a system that really does not reflect the tremendous gift that we have in this country. I ask everyone to join together and let's vote for this bill. Let's do it in a bipartisan manner. In states that have passed this legislation, the issues that keep popping up over these very important rights seem to go away. It helps protect that right, and I just would appreciate your vote. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. All right, we're going to take up amendment number 2. Amendment number 2, is there objection? There is objection. All those in favor of amendment number 2 will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the adoption of amendment number 2, the yeas are 32, the nays are 21, and the amendment is adopted. The question now is on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute as amended? Chair hears none, and the committee substitute is amended is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 32, the nays are 21. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Okay, if I could have everyone's attention, we're going to stand at recess until 1:30 sharp. At popular request, we're going to let everybody go take a quick lunch break at 1:30. The importance of 1:30 is that we're going to be joined by Justice Charlie Bethel to swear in our newest state senator, Cardin Summers, at 1:30. I would ask all of us to be back here at 1:30 sharp. We stand in recess.